Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric on our continuing series where we review every single CPS, CPS-, CPS2, and CPS3 game ever made. Today we're taking a look at Forgotten Worlds. It's another shmup, but unlike the ones we've shown so far, this one actually uses a spinner, which is a completely different way to control the character, and you'll see as I rotate around, you have 16 different firing directions. And while this game is really fun and I do enjoy it, I would say that I don't prefer spinner shmups over the classic arcade stick and button variety. But I know this is a lot of people's one of their favorite games, so it's definitely something I wanted to check out. What I do really like about the game, you'll see here, is we collect these blue little tokens. We're actually able to upgrade our weaponry and buy information about what the boss's weak points are. So there's a very light RPG element with upgrades and different paths you can take, which definitely gives the game a little bit different of a feel compared to most games, and I do appreciate it for that. But like I said, it's a super competent, really fun shmup, but for some reason I've never really been a huge fan of spinners. Maybe it's just the way my brain works, but I always feel like I'm just spinning them uncontrollably and really having issue in what direction to point the gun. Now, interestingly enough, I am not playing this with a spinner. I am playing this with an arcade stick, and I actually find that I'm much better at it. It's still definitely cumbersome to deal with enemies coming in both directions. Normally in a shmup, most of everything coming at you is going to be coming from your front, but I do kind of like how this game does work, giving you enemies in the back. Now, as far as how the game looks and sounds is concerned, it's definitely one of the earlier CP games, and while it looks really good, it's definitely limited in what it's doing compared to some of the later releases. But I do love the environment. It actually reminds me of the Cho Aniki series, just because you have these two muscle-bound guys fighting through a sci-fi world. It's definitely a lot tamer in its content matter than Cho Aniki, but it does have that same sort of interesting feel. And I love those little intercut sequences. It definitely feels like really early 90s emulating Arnold Schwarzenegger action movies. But like you said, it is a great game and it is a fun one to check out. And if you do like the spinner, you can certainly employ one when you're playing it if you get it hooked up correctly. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's not the easiest either. And you'll see here we pop back into that shop and pick a few more things up. And that's what I really do like about this game, is that there's different ways to play it. And there's definitely power-ups that are going to make it harder or easier depending on what level you are. Normally, whatever the new power-up you see appear is going to be the one that's going to be the best for the next level, but kind of in the same way that Mega Man, depending on how you beat the Robot Masters, the order in which you get their weapons, you can find weaknesses for other enemies. This is going to be the same thing in Forgotten Worlds. The right purchase power-up is going to make the game much easier, and the wrong one is going to make the game much harder. But I kind of like the universe it's set in for sure. You have these giant lizard men coming at you. You have these what look like sandworms, even though they're coming out of the water. All the visual storytelling in the game is quite interesting. It's this weird post-apocalyptic sci-fi world where we have different monsters and aliens and lizards. And you'll see here as we come up on the boss, a dragon with his rib cage ripped out and his heart exposed. And if you saw in that previous clip where we visited the shop, for 100 coins, or whatever the credits are in the game, not the actual coins you put into it, you find out that his weak spot is his heart. So you can actually buy information to find out what's going on. But these little intercut sequences are just pure classic 90s. And like I said, I mean, when this game came out, I was probably 9 years old, 10 years old. So to me, that just kind of seems like something I've seen a bunch of. But the soundtrack is really good too. I'll let you listen to it in about 30 seconds. But you'll see in the background, the game's not doing as much parallax scrolling as a lot of the other games I've shown previously. There really is just 3 layers. You have what's in the foreground, you have that big background layer, and then you have those stars that are going by ever so slightly faster. So it's not the most visually interesting game ever, but it still is a ton to play. And here we'll pick up the laser upgrade and we'll get information that the God of War wants to be attacked on his shoulders. You'll see what that means shortly, but enjoy the soundtrack for like 45 seconds in a minute. I'll come back and close out on why Forgotten Worlds is definitely a game worth checking out if you haven't yet. But enjoy. I definitely really enjoyed the soundtrack in this game. It has a mixture of like sci-fi space opera and like old fantasy vibes to it, which is definitely what's going on. We're in space, we're fighting space monsters, but yet you have this almost Vishnu-like looking character in the background raising one of the war gods. And it's definitely one of the biggest sprites in the game, and that is one of the most impressive cod pieces I've ever seen. It's got two giant spikes on it. I wonder what he's trying to compensate for. But again, we bought the information about using his shoulder pads as the weakness, and I definitely don't know why his shoulder pads would be the weakness, but it is good to know. But this is just a fun boss, and I do like the fact that the game does give you some verticality. Not every single stage is going to be scrolling left to right. Sometimes on the bosses you're going to be looking up. And big credit, and I mentioned this in past videos, this is one of the Capcom CP games that does not have a warning bell when your vitality is low. It's not beeping constantly, and God do I love it for that. But we've beaten that boss, and we get this other really great mohawk looking portrait there. The hairstyles in this game are just insane and crazy, and I love them. But I do also appreciate how it just mixes different stages up. I mean, we were just fighting lizard men in space, and now we're in this Egyptian level, and we're fighting what look like Mayans with bow and arrows. And it just is constantly giving you something new to look at, and all the enemies are really interesting. I mean, you just have floating heads that have masks on them. Who knows what's going on there? It's never really explained, but it's just a ton of fun to look at. And that's what I think is the main takeaway of this game. Is it the best shmup ever? No, it's not. Is it a good, kind of spinner shmup? Definitely. Do I enjoy spinner games? Not a ton. Does it play well with an arcade stick? Sure. You can 100% play this and you're really not going to struggle too much with it. But it's just a really unique and interesting game, and that's what I appreciate about Forgotten Worlds. And I just love the fact that you'll see here, we're going to buy the bouncing shots. It's going to bounce off different walls, and that's going to be really important for this stage, because you'll see as I shoot up and down, we have these bouncing projectiles, and it's going to hit enemies on the floor and on the ceiling that we'd otherwise have an issue aiming at. And that is just the strategy involved in this game, is your weapon selection is going to play a huge role in dealing with what's going on in the environment, because you'll see here one path opens, one path doesn't, and we're going to get into some constricted spaces where that bouncing shot is really going to make a difference. And this is the type of game that the more you play it, the more you're going to learn what works, and it's going to become much easier as you continue to play it. It's not the hardest game in the world, it's not the easiest. If you're pumping quarters into this, I think it might cost you like 10-15 bucks to finish it, which isn't the worst for an arcade game, but obviously if you're doing it on free play, it costs nothing, so what does it really matter? Every once in a while the game does like to slow down, like right here. You're just navigating through these flowers, which look kind of fun, but it just gives you a break. I don't think the game needs a break right here, and there's instances where it's just a little slow for slowness' sake, but it's really a minor complaint. And then another time here, you're going to have to shoot these mud walls up so you're not taking damage, and that's where that bounce shot really comes into play, because you're getting bounces that are going to hit enemies while you're navigating the environmental hazards, which I do appreciate. But like I said, I wanted to review every single Capcom CP game, and I definitely couldn't skip Forgotten Worlds, even though it is the type of game that I probably wouldn't pick up and play at any random day if I felt like playing a quick arcade shmup. I think a lot of the videos we've showed before, 1941 and others and ones coming up, would be ones that I would prefer to play more than Forgotten Worlds, but maybe you'll really enjoy this. Maybe this is the type of game that is made specifically for you, because this is a popular game. I just don't end up loving everything that is kind of, acclaimed as being one of the best. But I appreciate Capcom was trying to do something different and something unique, because so many shmups on the market, well great, we're doing the same thing. And this is listed as being the first Capcom CP System game ever to come out, although other lists have it as being the second, but either way, this came out in '89 and it looks great for that. But if you've never checked it out before, I definitely recommend you do. Maybe you'll find out that it's one of your new favorite games. Maybe you'll feel like me and you'll say, hey, it's decent, but it's not great. But if you do like all the absurd nature to it, if you like those weird muscle-bound characters, I highly recommend you check out Cho Aniki and Cho Aniki, because those are better shmups than this, in my opinion, and they push that weirdness up to 11, which I definitely enjoy in games. Short of that, we will be back next Tuesday with another video in this review series, and I'll have videos on Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Tuesday as well. But if you guys have any questions or comments, so leave them down below. I love chatting with you guys. And like I mentioned earlier, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below and hit like and subscribe and hit that notification bell like I just hit Pharaoh directly in the face. Short of that, thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys next week for the next review in the Capcom CP series reviews. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Was Nestor vessel in the air with the flying stone also? I'm not sure, but he won't be getting